though not on a one-to-one, but you are increasing in these other categories. And these other categories are 100% within your control. So I would like some clarity on that. But related to that, your staff costs. Chairperson, when you look at on page 7 of your submission, staff cost analysis, very, very strange breakdown. For 2019, and let's just look at 2019, basic salaries and wages, 56 million. All right? Then you have staff allowances, line number 3 there, 54 million. So you have allowances more than 100% of your basic salary and wages. It doesn't end there. When you go down, you see other staff costs, 19 million. So in your explanation of what strategies you are putting in place to reduce this huge staff cost bill, can you shed light on what's in these allowances and other staff costs?
I hope you can go ahead and respond.
Thank you, Chair. The first question from the honourable member was to find out about whether the 400,000 has been realized. This is confirmed money that is coming to ZMBC because it has been earned by virtue of that partnership. It's not like we are projecting, it's money that is coming. Then contract staff on the increase and together with the temporary staff. Chair, the issue of the contract staff was an attempt to try to deal with a problem of staff costs in the first place, where it was through the guidance of the board then, it was assessed that possibly one of the reasons that as an institution we're probably not getting optimum value from some of the members of staff is because they are on a permanent and pensionable arrangement. So the board guided to say, going forward, try as much as possible where you need to replace, try to bring staff on board that are going to be on contract. Now, we have created another challenge as a result of having to replace those members of staff that have gone by putting staff that are going to be on contract. The challenge has been that as they fall due at the end of their term of the contract, they are expected to be given their gratuity. So we have actually not cured the problem, and this is an issue that even as a management team we are having to review and possibly seek a review from the board ultimately to say that which was perceived to be possible cure of a problem of staff probably not applying themselves is really not a cure, because we have actually introduced another problem. So this is a matter that we are alive to, Honourable Chair and members of Parliament, that we hope that this matter can be reviewed as quickly as possible so that we don't have this continued challenge of paying gratuity, because that basically just worsens the situation for the institution. Then on the staff allowances, I know that the Director of Finance will step in. Honourable Chair and members of Parliament, yes, the staff allowances are showing there. One of the major issues that we have had over time is the fact that when staff go out for training or they go out on different assignments, especially when they are going out of station, they are eligible by virtue of what is contained in the conditions, in their conditions of service. So the bigger chunk of what we are seeing as staff allowances is what in ZMBC we are calling the China allowances. In order, why we are calling them China allowances is basically because we had a number of staff that went for training on digital migration. We had staff that needed to go for training so that when they come back they are able to maintain the equipment, they are also able to operate the equipment. And so because the numbers were big, we had about 211 members of staff from ZMBC over this particular period of time. And 211 obviously is a big number, and each one of them, by virtue of having flown out of the country, they were entitled to an allowance. But this allowance was actually delayed to be paid because of the liquidity challenges. And so it had to be spread over time. But allow me, Chair, to request the Director of Finance to elaborate more on the issues of the staff allowances, in case I might have left out one or two things. Thank you, Chair.
Chair and honorable members of Parliament, PS and DG. With regard to the issue of allowances, on this table, we actually have a separation. We have the top part that has payroll-related costs. Under the payroll-related costs, we also have staff allowances as the last line of a subtotal. So in there, we have 54.8 million for 2019, 52.1 million for 2018, and 54.3 million for 2017. So these are allowances that are actually paid through the payroll. And this is due to the fact that we have a disaggregated payroll structure in ZBC, where we have a line for basic pay, then there's housing allowance, then we have utility allowance, we have education allowance also, which comes not on a monthly basis. But then, so what we have in here, the staff allowances, is mainly the housing allowance component. And so all these are paid through the payroll. So then for the other staff allowances, which is other staff costs, which was referred to, that is where we have the travel allowances, the medical allowance, the funeral expenses, as well as the out-of-pocket allowances, which the Director General alluded to. And so this is how the composition of the staff allowances are for the payroll, as well as the ones that are outside payroll. So because of the business arrangement, we have a lot of labor hours that are spent out in terms of programming. And so mostly we find ourselves having to pay allowances for different courages that are undertaken within town and outside town. And so we find ourselves having to have the staff allowances being at rates of, like, say, 19 million in a year. And then I think basically that's a breakdown for the staff costs. So some, like I've said, are payroll, and some are non-payroll related. I submit, Chair.
Honorable Anakoka, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. Director of Finance, can you therefore confirm, because I was getting very worried with the response from the DG, when he suggested that the training costs were part of these payroll-related costs. So are you confirming now that in that staff allowances, which is 100% of basic salaries, what you have there is housing allowance, education and utility allowances, but certainly not the training costs, the China allowance as he christened it?
Chair and honorable members, I would like to confirm that the China allowance is not part of the payroll costs. But I'll probably just try to clarify why probably DG brought it out like that. When it came to settlement of these allowances, we managed them through the payroll, in the sense that, like he said, there was a delay in paying them because of liquidity challenges. So when it came to a time for payment, we devised a plan where we would pay them through payroll in and out. Maybe that's where the issue came from. I submit, Chair.
Honorable Anakoka, you're done with your questions?
Yes, Chair. We can leave it there for now.
For now,
But very strange mix there. Certainly in your rationalizing of the costs here, you need to revisit this structure here.
Okay. Have you had, do you have anything to ask on the financial position?
Absolutely, Chair. Those were right the questions. I can come to my substantive questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
PS, I will first of all want to ask, does ZNBC have a strategic plan that you are working with? Because to me, all these turnaround strategies you're talking about you will not know whether you are realizing what you intended to realize if you didn't even anticipate through a properly considered strategic plan. So my first question is, do you have a strategic plan? Following on from there, on page 5 of your submission, Controlling Officer, you have stated that in line with the turnaround strategy, the corporation has embarked on revenue generating activities. And some of the revenue generating activities you have highlighted include the 400,000 that I referred to earlier as part of a rider question. Now, you alluded to the fact that one of the reasons you are not generating sufficient revenue is that you do not have what you've termed as attractive content. So my first question, or now my second question following on the one on the strategic plan, is what measures have you put in place to ensure that content is attractive? Because I think we all here can have something to say about ZNBC content. Probably even ZNBC staff themselves do not watch it when they get to their homes. So what is it that you're doing to make the content attractive? And can you convince this committee that the turnaround strategy, if we can call it even a strategy, so let me call them measures that you've embarked on, will actually realize positive results? The other question I had, Chairperson, was on sustainable administrative expenses, but that I think has been canvassed already. But let me go to the other operating expenses, which aspect we didn't talk about earlier. How is it that you have such huge other operating expenses that are not commensurate with your revenue? I'm saying so because operating expenses are related to the activities you are carrying out. So you seem to have a huge component of other operating expenses which are seemingly fixed in nature. So what are we going to do, or what are you doing to address this issue in order to improve on your sustainability? The last question is on the financial ratios. PS indicated that the poor current and high debt ratios are as a result of poor liquidity measures and increase in liabilities. And you've indicated that one of the liabilities is actually a loan of 111,756,699, which you have said was fully settled. But that loan is only about 5% of the liabilities. You haven't said anything about the other liabilities. So what's the progress on you addressing the other liabilities? I'll pause there, Chairperson.
Permanent Secretary, please, you can address those questions.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me, Chair, to invite the DG to respond. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair. Chair, the first question was to find out whether ZNBC has got a strategic plan in place. I wish to confirm, Chair, that indeed ZNBC has a strategic plan from 2021 to 2025. It's running as we speak. The second question was to find out on the content, that the content is not attractive. Indeed, it is a concern for us as an institution that the content has not been to the level that we ourselves expect to have as an institution. And it's on that premise that, Chair, you noticed there has been a growth in the investment that as an institution we have been undertaking towards procurement of content. That is really just for the purpose of making sure that we provide compelling content, we provide content that is going to enable us to attract an advertiser and want to associate with that content. Unfortunately, this content is not cheap. it actually calls for a lot of money to be paid before you can actually get that particular content. And so on whether some of our staff are not watching, I'm sure you'll be pleased, honorable members of parliament, that there's been a significant turnaround in terms of how especially our news is actually looking. Significant turn in the sense that even the comments speak to the fact that we have seen a lot of interest for people to watch our news. We have also seen the numbers. As they say, the numbers do not lie. We have seen an increase, especially for the online, which is what we are able to measure, an increase for those that are watching online. For some platforms where you were probably just getting 5,000, you are able to see that the numbers have actually gone to as high as 8,000 in a particular night around the 19 hours news. And so we want to maintain that particular pace. We hope that we can also continue to be supported by the general public, that indeed we mean very well, that we want to operate as a public media institution, as it were, so that we continue to attract those audiences, because it's only then that an advertiser is going to want to advertise around ZNBC. That's about the content. Then whether we can realize positive outcome out of the turnaround strategies that we have, Chair, one of the undertakings as a management team to try to improve our liquidity as an institution is to just make sure that where we had some challenges, it was on how to manage our credit, our creditors and our debtors, so to say. In so saying, what we have done is to make sure that before any client can come on board to have business with ZNBC, there is going to be credit worthiness undertaken before we can actually engage, so that we do not have a situation where we attract someone to advertise with ZNBC and they're not able to pay. And then we have in our books a number of people increasing as failing to pay that which they're supposed to pay. So that is one aspect that we are stringent about, we are closely monitoring as a way of
contributions. And then they'll also charge penalties on paid contributions. So what happened in this year is we had put in place an arrangement where we were making installment payment against the old date, and then also we're doing debt swaps. So what happened is that when we did some swaps and some installment payment against very old returns and made those payments, the calculation of penalties was from the time those returns were due to the time that we actually paid. There was a penalty charged on those amounts, and then there was also penalties that were already sitting as a result of unpaid contributions. So hence that big jump that we had in that particular year.
Okay, thank you very much, Director of Finance. I think you've made your point. So the big jump is explained by penalties on NAPSA. And of course, as committee, we need to take note of this. It's a perennial issue. NAPSA, I'm sure you are alive to the fact that the law, there's a proposal to try and change the law. However, of course, that is another boardroom decision that will be made. For purpose of progress, all we needed to appreciate is the fact that this big jump is caused by NAPSA penalties, so that we justify the case of why this NAPSA thing is now a problem in most of the parastatals and government-aided institutions, and yet at the end of the day, it's being affected by the income they get. So, okay, for purpose of progress, Honorable Nakoka, we only have 15 minutes remaining before we, and yet we need to finish the remaining. So, if you ask the question, just a short one. And Honorable Kampiongo. Is it Honorable Kampiongo or Honorable?
Honorable Nakoka, but I just,
okay,
one short one.
Okay.
I heard the Director of Finance talk about debt swap. She can just elaborate how is that debt swap? You have NAPSA owing ZNBC. Can you shed a bit of light on that?
Maybe you can answer that one quickly, and then Honorable Nakoka.
Yeah, the debt swap in the sense that NAPSA would consume broadcasting services from ZNBC. They would advertise as well as just have some programs on air. Then
Thank
we
you
charge
very
them.
much, Director
But
of
the rates
Finance.
at which
I'm really pressured on time. We just wanted, I think Honorable Kampiongo wanted to get a clarification of what caused the debt swap, and I think your submission of saying they consumed services at ZNBC through adverts is enough for us to understand that. Of course, other details about the rates which you are about to get in that may not be so much relevant to what we want to get. Honorable Anakoka, you can go.
Very quick one, Chairperson. Director, on the issue of Director General, on the issue of content, I have been wondering at a personal level why ZNBC doesn't seem to be having breaking news. So you would have a situation where you have news at 19 hours, and maybe at 20 hours there's a fire somewhere in the neighborhood, and people would look forward to knowing whether this is true or not. And one of the institutions people would be looking to would be ZNBC. Does ZNBC have what I would call, for lack of a better term, a breaking news crew, so that it can enhance your content? My second right, Chairperson, is on something that has already been canvassed. The training, China allowances or trading expenses. How was this possible that you sent staff for training on credit, as it were, without actually paying them their allowances? Was this a fully sponsored training program, or it was ZNBC that was actually sponsoring? And finally, Chairperson, earlier on the Director General alluded to the fact that as part of the revenue generating measures they are
signed for, there was a specific amount that was agreed. And that's the reason to why these contractors were now brought on board. So now, how can we say that the payment is not, the Zambian government is not making payment? Because repayment of the loan and disbursement of the loan are two different things. You can only pay that which you have received in a full. Are we saying that the agreement was that the Zambian government needed to start repaying the loan at the same during the period of receiving disbursements? No. Have you seen the sense in my question, honorable members?
Yeah.
Because if it was a loan, it should have been disbursed first in full, and then the repayment continues. Was the loan cancelled? That's where that's the question for the committee to understand.
Yeah, Chair, the loan was not cancelled. That's the starting point. The loan was not cancelled, but it's a situation where the contractor is not able to continue the works, basically because the contractor is saying they have not received the money from Exim Bank of China for them to continue to finish off the project. So the contractor...
What this committee is looking for is the why Exim Bank is not disbursing to the contractor when it is a loan that has been signed for and was approved. The why is what we want to know. If you don't know, DG, pass that to the controlling officer. If the controlling officer does not know, this committee has capacity to go wherever and get that information. We want to keep it on record so that we don't continue discussing the same issue.
Yeah, Chair, at this point, indeed, I'll leave it for the controlling officer to respond accordingly.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, could you, with your indulgence, allow our Director Planning from the Ministry to respond to that? Thank you.
Please go ahead, Director. It's a very important point, so we want to hear what exactly the status is. Pass me there.
Good morning, Chair, once again, and the members of Parliament. As alluded
kindly speak up because it's being recorded on radio and TV.
My name is Dr. Ruth Mlenga, Director Planning in the Ministry. as alluded to, and with your guidance, the loan negotiations about the digital migration were between the Ministry of Finance and the Exim Bank. So in that regard, anything that has to do with the stalling of disbursements of the loan, we can safely say that we can channel it to the higher officers, Minister of Finance, because the negotiations were between them and the Exim Bank. I submit, Chair.
Thank you very much for that submission. So we have taken note. I think we are going to have a Minister of Finance appearing before this committee at some point, so we will definitely follow it up. Thank you, honorable members. We are running fast, and we should be winding up in the next 5 minutes. Any other very important they didn't finish. I'm being reminded that you didn't finish answering.
No.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. The next item was to do with the measures to avoid deterioration. Yeah, arising from the fact that there is little activity in terms of construction work by the contractor, what we have done is we have staff on the ground that every so often just making sure that everything is in order that has actually been constructed for all the provincial studios as it is. Because they are located in areas where staff can easily reach out, that is periodically being checked by our members of staff, the technical staff on the ground, to avoid deterioration. Then on the lack of oversight for Topstar, why not in English? Chair may be pleased to note that the management at Topstar was directed to engage a local audit firm. And the local audit firm is in the process of getting on the ground to audit the accounts. And obviously, because it's a local audit firm, we expect that the books of accounts will be reported in English. I submit, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, honorable members. The part 3 of is it B? Okay, we have two questions in the interest of time. Honorable Kampion, were you ready for this one?
Yes, Chair. Madam PS, I'll take you to page 20 of the memorandum. The issue of weaknesses in the implementation of subsidiary credit agreement. Or maybe it's the same. Who are supposed to repay the loan on behalf of ZNBC? And on the Auditor General's report, it's what, page 198. The figure of 11,609,057 United States dollars in the Auditor General's report was that at 31st December of 2019, what was the interest as at 31st October 2021, and how much of this interest is as a result of delayed payments? You also submitted that you have engaged the Minister of Finance for intervention to avoid defaulting in honoring loan repayment obligations. What is the status quo? What response did you get from the Minister of Finance? And certainly you might attract litigation in this matter. So where are we, Madam PS?
Thank you. Through the chair, kindly allow the DG to respond to that query.
Okay, please DG, respond to that query. It's,
thank you, Chair. Indeed, as
just before you respond to that query, Honorable Mapani, I think you can include one more question. DG, just keep a tab on the queries. Honorable Mapani.
I can see it.
Honorable Musmali. Yes, please. You can go with that. Switch on the mic.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll take the witness to page 199 of the audit report and page 21 of their submissions. In regard to failure to secure title deeds and the encroachment at Musekela, presumably in Chipata. The Public Finance Management Act of 2018 requires the controlling officer to secure properties through acquiring of title deeds. I've noticed that there was a reactive measure from the corporation to go and start the process of obtaining title deeds for the properties dotted throughout the country. After the Auditor General's report, the question is, why can the controlling officer explain to this committee why it took the Auditor General in order for them to start the process of securing title deeds? Secondly, why did it take the corporation so long to act on the encroachment on its property, in particular reference to Musekela? I submit, Chair.
DG, please respond to those queries. I hope you still remember the query on the first one. Yes, if you can combine them.
Thank you, Chair. The first item was on the subsidiary credit agreement. Who is supposed to pay on behalf of ZMBC? Chair, as per subsidiary credit agreement, it is expected that ZMBC should be able to pay this particular loan. But clearly, Honorable Chair, it's a matter that due to the liquidity position of the institution, it's a matter that has been escalated to the Ministry of Finance. And therefore, even the issue of the interest will be covered through that engagement with the Ministry of Finance. Then, Chair, if I may ask the Director Legal to talk about the issue of title, the failure to secure land.
So we take it that you are unable to give response on this one. We should pursue it. But do you have any evidence of your communication with Minister of Finance regarding this issue?
We have, Honorable Member.
Okay, please just arrange to submit it so that Secretariat can have it, and then the members will have to appreciate that.
Thank you.
So that we now, in our engagement with Minister of Finance, we have some empirical evidence or some evidence of, yeah. All right, you can go ahead and finish off on answering the remainder.
Chair, I requested the Director Legal to respond to the issue of the title. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Chair and members of Parliament. The issue of chasing for title, Chair, did not start after we were queried. We started pursuing the issue of title some time back, as early as 2012. However, we've not been helped in securing the titles by Ministry of Lands. So when the audit was done now, it was decided by management that we should use our provincial senior maintenance engineers who have done a good job because they are on the ground and they're actually talking to the provincial lands officers in the provinces. So we have been pursuing the matter of title, Chair, as far back as 2012. I submit, Chair.
Thank you so much. Director Legal, you are the submissions made to this committee, and I'll take you to page 21. Page 21 on your corrective action, number 1. You stated that the corporation acknowledges that some of its properties do not have title deeds, and efforts to get the title commenced with a lot of challenges in some cases. Since the audit query was raised, the corporation wrote to all provincial lands officers to request for assistance for the corporation to obtain title for its properties, and you say correspondence is available. Why are you telling us now that you didn't start as a result of the audit query, when in your own submissions that's what you have submitted? I want him to...
Director Legal, please respond to that.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Honorable Member of Parliament. This was a new strategy, Chair, that arose as a result of the audit. In the past, we would engage the lands officers from Lusaka, but management decided that that was not effective. If you can check, I think there was an appendix that we sent. We dealt with Chipata. We even paid for the survey and everything in 2012. But that strategy, Chair, was not working. So after we were queried this particular time, we decided as management that it was going to be better to actually deal with the provincial lands officer instead of dealing with the Minister of Lands at Lusaka. I submit, Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Due to time, I have to wind up and end here in terms of engagement with this witness, the Ministry of Information and Media and ZNBC. Therefore, Permanent Secretary, Madam Nalitova C. Mwale, and you can say your final words to the committee before we remove the immunity.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable members of Parliament. Chair, we must point to this committee that this institution, ZNBC, will continue engaging government for support. The institution has very poor liquidity levels, and which have led to an increased number of liabilities. So we are still engaging Ministry of Finance. We'll continue engaging them to assist this institution come out of this. Chair, we also wish to thank you with your committee for your wise counsel. We have taken note of your questions, and we have endured and tried to respond to them. And we are available, Chair, if there is any other questions that you may need to follow up even after this engagement with you this morning. Chair, we wish to thank you on behalf of the ministry and indeed on behalf of ZNBC for giving us this opportunity to appear before the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Acting Permanent Secretary. On that note, I would like to lift the immunity that I had conferred you, provided through Cap 12 of the National Assembly Powers and Privileges, Amendment Act number 13 of 2016. When you leave this room, you are on your own. Whatever you say then is not covered with that immunity. Thank you very much for coming.